A recent Deloitte study finds 1/3 of women are concerned about their personal safety at work. Well, there's a new book out that's exploring one woman's story. Journalist and author Amy DuBois Barnett's new novel, If I Ruled the World, explores ambition, identity, and power. It pulls back the curtain on the glitz and the dark side of the 90s and the 2000s, which is like my era of being Vlad. Barnett gives us a glimpse of her own story in climbing her way to the top as former editor-in-chief for Ebony, Honey magazine, and Teen People, as well as editor of Essence. And now she is celebrating the release of her first ever novel. I'm so excited. Amy DuBois Barnett is here. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's my pub day.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So let's talk about the motivation for writing this book, the genesis for this book.
Well, I started writing If I Ruled the World when I was the editor-in-chief of Teen People. And at the time, I was the first Black woman to run a major mainstream magazine in the country. And I was experiencing, and I was also in the middle of the culture. You know, it was the early 2000s. I had been editor-in-chief of Honey magazine. And I'd really gone back and forth between cultures, between worlds. And I was in the middle of, trying to navigate the magazine industry, but also the music industry because I was music adjacent. And so I was dealing with rampant misogyny and racism. And so I started writing this book, but I put it down for about 15 years. But the story, it just wouldn't leave my mind. And when I finally realized that it was, themes that I needed to explore and that felt more urgent than ever, I picked it back up and I finished it.
Wow. So you titled the book, If I Ruled the World. It's a nod to Nas and Lauryn Hill iconic song. We can all say, if I ruled the world, right? How are you answering that question, if I ruled the world, in this book?
Well, one of the themes is the price of ambition, right? The cost of that. And, the novel is set in, late 1990s, 2000s New York City at the intersection of music and magazines and fashion. And, my protagonist is not coming of age because she's 29 when we meet her, but she's coming of power inside of influential institutions where glamour and romance and, friendship coexist alongside misogyny and racism and danger, right? And so as she's trying to figure out, as she gains access and is trying to figure out how she wants to go for her dreams, she is trying to decide who she's willing to become and what she's willing to sacrifice along the way. And so we're dealing with that theme.
Okay, Amy, so this sounds like Amy Barnett's story. Like, why go the novel route and why not just write that juicy memoir that names the names or at least says, you will know who this person is, but gives us a sense of because it does a little bit sound like you.
I'm bracing myself, Vlad, for the number of people who are going to be like, it's your story. It's actually not my story. It is it's inspired by my journey as an editor-in-chief, and it is based in a world I know better than anyone.
Right.
But the journey of my protagonist is not my particular journey. It is a work of fiction. And I wrote it sort of in a very cathartic way, but also okay, what would have happened if I made this wrong decision? What would have happened if I went this direction instead of that direction? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so it enabled me to get some things out, emotionally that I wouldn't have been able to do in a memoir because, again, it is not my actual journey. It's not me.
But what is you is this is today is the day that the book comes out, right? But before this publication day, you have already secured a deal with Hulu. Talk to me about that. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited. Well, when I wrote If I Ruled the World, I saw all the scenes in my head. I mean, I thought about it very cinematically. It's a very visual book. There's a lot of texture in there. It's behind the sort of curtain peek at this, important cultural era. And I always envisioned it being on screen. And so when it was, kind of discovered, by a book scout and then given to Hollywood and then, given to Lee Daniels and Emma Watts, and they loved the book. I was incredibly thrilled when we, began to pitch it. And now I have a television development deal for the adaptation, the television adaptation of the book with Lee Daniels at Hulu.
That is incredible.
I know, I'm so excited.
I mean, could you have imagined it in any other way?
I mean, I can't, and it happened before the book came out.
What?
So.
You're incredible. Amazing.
I know,
congratulations. I'm so
you.
happy for you. And it's great that you were able to, thank you for coming in and sharing all this with us. This is awesome.
I mean, I'm super excited to be here on my pub day. I appreciate the support for this book that I put so much, love and part into and means so much to me. So thank you.
I love it. Thank you very much for coming on. Again, the book is called If I Ruled the World by Amy DuBois Barnett. Amy, always great to have you. Come back anytime.